Carl. Today's topic is transportation. It isn't easy running a big, complex urban transit system during a pandemic or in the aftermath when ridership is still down, costs are rising, and there's a labor shortage. Today's speaker, Lynn Guissinger, is somehow undaunted by these challenges. For the last 6 years, Lynn has served very ably, representing all of us on the board of directors of RTD, the Regional Transportation District. Lynn is here to tell us about some of RTD's recent challenges and some of its successes. Before being first elected to the RTD board in 2018, Lynn served as the chair of the City of Boulder's Transportation Advisory Board. She founded a nonprofit that was devoted to promoting alternative forms of transportation in Western states. And in addition to that, she's a really good lawyer. I've known Lynn for a long time, and I know this to be true. She is a graduate of CU Law. She clerked at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals after law school. She was a full-time attorney at Holland and Hart for a time. She went on from there to become a clinical professor and instructor of substantive courses at CU Law School, teaching, among other things, land use law. Lynn, it's a delight to have you here today. Please welcome Lynn Guissinger.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, David. That was a very nice introduction. So when I first went on the RTD board, someone said, and she's an expert in land use law. I said, as of 1992 when I taught it, so don't expect too much. But I was here last as a visitor when David invited me when Nate Miner was here talking about the ghost train, which many of you may have heard, but if you didn't, he wrote a four-part podcast. He was a reporter, is a reporter for CPR, and he wrote a four-part podcast on Northwest Rail and what happened, how it was promised, and why we haven't been able to deliver it yet. I like to say when people ask me, I'll jump right to the question I get very often, which is, when are we getting our train? And I like to say that we're getting it in February, but I'm just not sure which February it's going to be. So it's coming. I'll tell you one more question I often get that I am working on. Have some of you ridden the bus to the airport? A lot of people. It's a great deal, isn't it? If you're over 65, it's $1.35 to get to the airport. It's a screaming deal. I'm not even sure how it got that cheap. But if you're not, it's $10. It's still a great deal. But the question I get is, when are you going to get more service? It's always standing room only, and I'm working on it. I'm working on it. That goes back to a lot of our workforce issues. You know, our schedulers would love to bring more service there, love to bring back the LX, the Express from Longmont to Denver. We would love to bring back more service to Boulder Junction. That's, I know that's where the coffee shop has just opened. That's one of our classic TODs, transit-oriented developments, and right now it doesn't have the T, so we need to bring the transit back in a much bigger way. But those are some of the things we're working on. Thanks for having me. I'm going to start with, where do I shoot this? Do I shoot this? I'm sorry? Oh, there it went. Okay. I'll talk about some of the recent agency successes, our TABOR issue, which is coming up, our financial outlook, and Northwest Rail service conversations. I don't think I'll get into the last topic there. The agency, as David suggested, the agency, should I be pointing it here? Okay. Yeah, if you can get it to the next one, that'd be great. Overnight, and I'll show you the numbers in a few minutes, when the pandemic hit, our ridership dropped 70%. Basically, we were driving the critical workers, people who had to go to work. And so ultimately, we ended up cutting our service by 40%. So we've been coming back, and I think we've gotten a lot of good things done in the last few years. We brought in a new CEO, an African-American woman from all around the country. She's worked on a lot of different agencies, a woman named Deborah Johnson, who has done a great job. We're working hard to keep her around. And got it? Thank you. And we've made some big changes. One of the biggest changes was we did a study of our fares. And we used to have a CFO who would come in and say, and then 3 years from now, we're going to raise fares. And then 3 years from that, we're going to raise fares again. And the board was like, no, we can't keep doing that. And Deborah really got that. And what happened most significantly for our area is we went to a single flat fare. It used to be $275 for a local bus, $550 if you wanted to go to Denver or to the airport. And except for the airport bus, which is still $10, now all the buses and trains are $2.75. If you have a disability that's been approved, or if you're over 65, or in our low-income program, it's half that. So if you're over 65, as I said, you pay $1.35, including going to the airport. I guess I need to look at this. Two of the more popular programs that we started in an effort to join the state and the district and the region in our climate goals were the Zero Fare Month and Zero Fare for Youth. And the state joined with us in first having a Zero Fare Month in 2022, and then in 2023, they gave us a bit more money, and we were able to expand it to free months in July and August. And those are really about the ground level ozone, but those are the worst months, and the effort is get people out of their cars. So you probably may have seen it if you were riding any of the buses then. It was free in July and August last year. What I'm really excited about is Zero Fare for Youth. This year it's a pilot. Youth through age 19 don't pay to ride the bus. And that's the reason is that gets people learning to ride the bus and taking transit. But when I went to a committee that was taking testimony, the state is trying to come up with $7 million, I think, toward that program. And the most impressive, well, two things were impressive. The number of youth that came in and said, you have really made a difference. And one of the truancy officers for Denver Public Schools said the biggest reason that kids don't come to school is lack of transportation. And they have been able to document a significant decrease in truancy once the fares were free. So those are victories, aren't they? Overall ridership, yeah, thanks. Let's see, I think I have you can see this is where the pandemic hit, and that's where our ridership went in the 2-month period in March and April in 2020. So it's been climbing back. This is where it was in 2019. This is where it was in 2023. It's still coming back. The free fare months have helped, but we still are only at about 60% of where we were in 2019. Part of that is we haven't been able to bring back all the service because of workforce issues. But a big part of it is people aren't going to work. They're working from home, which, if you look at the bigger picture of the climate, that's not a bad thing if people aren't commuting as much. But also people just got out of practice of taking transit. So we're hoping that will come back again. TABOR is a huge issue for us this year. In 1999, we just go to the middle here, voters approved a ballot issue to expand some of our rail lines, and at the same time said that RTD did not have to pay back, to refund money under TABOR. We were exempt from TABOR until we paid off our bonds. RTD is funded with a 1-cent sales tax that all of us pay. 6/10 of that goes to the base system, which was the original RTD, and you can kind of think of that as the bus system. 4/10 of that was added in 2004 with the fast tracks. So what we're losing the TABOR waiver on is the 6/10, or about $600 million a year. If you look at what that will do, I think it's the next slide here. That gives you a sense of what it will do is start to pull money off the top that we will have to refund. We've looked at other counties, Jefferson County and El Paso County, that have not been able to debruce, are still subject to TABOR, and they're having to refund 7 to 10% of their income every year, their revenue. That would mean RTD having to give back $40 to $60 million. So it's a big deal. The state right now is saying they're looking for funding for us. There are actually 3 bills dealing with RTD in the legislature, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the biggest thing anybody can do for RTD this year, which is not part of their legislation, is to support a debrucing. And we have not put that on the ballot. The board will probably put it on the ballot in June, assuming we decide to, and I think that is, we're polling right now, and need to wait and see what the polling looks like. But certainly, you know, it's hard to sit back and say, well, we'll just lose $60 million a year until we think the environment's better. We've gotten some good polling numbers. There was a poll in Denver that we were no part of, and it asked about Denver Public Schools and Denver City Council, the mayor, Denver Airport, and RTD. And the only 2 that they said had highly favorable ratings were RTD and the Denver Airport. We came in at 55%. Front Range Passenger Rail also did some polling recently on a potential ballot issue to remove us from the TABOR requirements, which is called the debrucing. I'm sure most of you know that. But their poll said that 60% of people said they would support that. You know, the nice thing about a debrucing election is you get to start without raising taxes. Can RTD keep its money? So it's an easier sell than many of them. RTD, one thing I guess I'm really proud of is we have been able, in a time when transit agencies around the country are hitting a fiscal cliff and needing billions of dollars in bailouts, we've been able to really strengthen our financial position in the short run. We have done some refinancing, some changes in our bond payments, and if you look at the second bullet there, S&P Global Ratings upgraded our fast tracks bonds to AAA, which is their highest rating. So right now we're in good shape. And through the middle projections, the next few years, we're in good shape. Starting in the 30s, we start to have trouble meeting our obligations. And as I said earlier, but most of our money, about 75, 80% of our money is this sales and use tax. We also get the smaller portion now that we don't have as much ridership, but about 6 or 7% in fares, and then operating grants, federal grants, a little bit of state money. We actually are 44th in how much money the state gives us. So one of the things we've been working on is trying to work with the state to get more funding. As I mentioned, there are 2 bills in the legislature right now. One of those, you may be hearing more about, it just was introduced last week, and it's been in the papers. It's about reforming RTD and fixing the governance model. Right now, the board is 15 people who are elected by districts. So I represent Western Boulder County, basically, Boulder, Louisville, Superior, Nederland, Lyons, and part of Longmont. Somebody else represents the east half and Broomfield, but each of us represents a district. There's a statement in the second page of the bill they have that I think shows a fundamental misunderstanding of of what the board does. They said that the directors are elected from 15 districts, and then it says each director only represents the voters or their people in their district. And that's just not the case. We're fiduciaries. I'd say I spend 90% or more of my time just working on bettering the agency and doing the work of the agency. I do work with our local governments, as David said. David and I were on TAB together, the Transportation Advisory Board, and have been friends a long time. But I work closely with our local governments. I met yesterday with all the mayors and commissioners from the Northwest Corridor, which is Westminster and North coming up here. But most of our work is getting the finances in order, working with our staff to do things like lowering fares and things like that. We are trying hard to bring back service. As David mentioned, workforce is just a huge issue, and we gave substantial raises 3 years ago in our CBA, our collective bargaining agreement. We have a union, the ATU, that represents all of our different mechanics, operators, all of those things. And just, it's a hard world out there. If you can drive a bus with 60 people, or you can drive for FedEx, or I think we're competitive money-wise with Amazon and the others, but I think those are seen as easier jobs. And we still have, coming out of the pandemic, especially in downtown Denver areas, they've had a lot more issues with assaults and things like that, and we have those issues with our drivers as well. We spend a lot of time making sure that we're protecting our drivers and doing what we need to keep them on board. So hopefully we're making progress with that issue. Northwest Rail. As I've said, and as I think most of you know, Northwest Rail was one of the many rail lines that were promised in fast tracks. And what happened roughly, probably over-promising, but also, we've gone through a couple of recessions. The price of all of those building materials, concrete and steel and everything else, has gone up so much more than what was expected that it just was, we have 4 lines that still remain to be done. One of them is the in line. We've done partially up I-25, and then a couple of lines down in Denver. But the one that's the biggest deal, of course, here and generally, I think, I call it the albatross around RTD's neck, is Front Range Passenger, is Northwest Rail. And you can see over there in the map where Northwest Rail is intended to run. It runs from Denver up to Longmont, goes out, is intended to stop at Westminster, Broomfield, Louisville, Boulder, and Longmont. So that is a little different from what the governor is proposing with Front Range Passenger Rail, if you followed that. The governor's proposal is, and there is a Front Range Passenger Rail district now. Front Range Passenger Rail is intercity rail. RTD does commuter rail. But we are working together because they would like to have rail going from Pueblo up to Fort Collins. But the idea is to start in this stretch that RTD is obligated under fast tracks to do and try to sort of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So we've been working with them to see if we can move it forward. At the same time, even before that started moving forward, RTD engaged a study on Northwest Rail peak period service. The idea being that full service, as was initially contemplated, is very expensive and may not have the ridership to support it. But this idea came out of Longmont originally. It's to look at 3 trains in the morning from Longmont and 3 trains going back in the afternoon going back. So they would come through Boulder and out through Louisville and all of that. We're very close to finishing that study. We should have numbers, ridership numbers, costs, all of that this summer. We're really waiting on Burlington Northern. All of this is on Burlington Northern's tracks. And a big piece of what happened that meant we couldn't provide Northwest Rail was Burlington Northern started getting busier with their coal, and the price went way up above what we were expecting. So It's not as busy now. Really, there are only 3 to 5 trains they're running a day through this track area. So our hope is that we can move forward with a better. I don't know if you read in the paper or saw recently that they ran a demo train from Denver up to Longmont, and I was able to get on that. It's the governor and a lot of legislators and trying to show what it could be. And it could be great. I think that the timing from Longmont is good timing. I think from Boulder, you probably can do at least as well on the Flatiron Flyer, but certainly, it's a good option that could go well. So a lot to be worked out. We are working with the Front Range Passenger Rail District. The idea being, even if we ended up starting Northwest Rail separately in order to hit those towns along the way, that we're doing a lot of the same preparation, putting positive train control that stops the trains automatically. It's required by the federal government. Hundreds of millions of dollars that would have to go on the track. Possibility for sharing the fleet, some of the operational issues. So we're waiting to see what happens there. The second bill that's in the Senate right now, in the state Senate, Senator Finberg from this area is the main sponsor, and it's SB 24-184. It's the Surface Transportation Infrastructure Development Act, and basically it's setting the groundwork for Front Range Passenger Rail. They're proposing a rental car fee that would come in and start to fund part of it, and the idea is they would like to get the FISA, which is RTD's Fast Track's internal savings account money, to go out for federal grants. Ultimately, they will be coming to taxpayers to look for more money, but right now they're in the process of coming up with their service development plan, and we're working with them. Our CEO, Deborah Johnson, is probably the only person in this area who has helped put rail in at other places where she's been. So she has been a huge help. In terms of RTD's financial commitment, that's going to come to the board. It'll be up to the board to decide, and it really depends on what we see from Front Range Passenger Rail in terms of their service development plan and their plan for funding it beyond what we could do. So I'm going to stop there and see if you have some questions. I'd love to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've been listening to wonderful lectures like yours and reading things, and there's a Boulder Weekly for 20-some years. At that time, when they first announced light rail, it was supposed to open in 2015. That was the original opening date. And it was, by the way, there was also to be a stop at 63rd and the Diagonal.
That's right.
Yeah. From everything I know, light rail is dead. So is it fair to conclude that there will definitely be some kind of rail transportation between Boulder and Longmont, even if we don't know which February it will be?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Senator Finberg sent out an email recently, and it was entitled, "We're finally building the damn rail." We kind of looked at that. I think at RTD we feel like RTD is the expert at overpromising and underdelivering, and especially on this topic. So no, I would not say it's fair to conclude anything is definite. I think that there is much more hope now than there was 2 years ago. I think the governor is very focused on it. He's got some great minds focused on it. CDOT's working on it. John Putnam, who was Secretary Buttigieg's counsel, he was the general counsel to the Department of Transportation in D.C. for a couple of years, is back here working on it. There are, and like I said, we are working with them, but they're taking the lead, and that's the way it should be. So I think there is hope. A lot of the reason there is hope is the bipartisan infrastructure law came up with $66 billion. About 32 of that went to the Northeast Corridor, but that was for rail, for Amtrak and rail facilities. The Front Range Passenger Rail District has been included in a corridor ID program that basically says you're on the right track. And in fact, there are 37 proposals in that program around the country, and only 2 were admitted into the step 2, because they are further along than some. But of that money, there's only about $2.8 billion left. So got to be moving toward it pretty soon, and we'll just see. I hope we get it. I can't give you any definites.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, and you?
All right. So you just answered one part of my question, which is you are eligible for some money under the Infrastructure Act. How about the Inflation Reduction Act, which is emphasizing, more of the energy issues, given our delegation and its relationship to the Biden administration? Have we made any efforts to get some more federal money to deal with this?
There are a number of different federal pots. There's a grant program called Just Transition that is about transitioning workers from coal jobs and similar jobs to cleaner energy jobs. And some of that money, I think, is being applied for or will be applied for. The other rail that they want to get going right now at the same time is taking the Winter Park ski train and turning it into a train that goes through Winter Park, up through Steamboat, and then to Hayden and Craig. And that, I think, it gets into some of that just transition money that may be what you're referring to. I'm actually not sure if it was in the IRA or not, but there's a federal state grant program that is the big one that we would hope to get money for. There's a variety of smaller grant programs, so I assume they will be applying for all of them once we get the matching funds. Thanks.
Well, thanks for speaking to the club. My question concerns the fact that most of us seem to be addicted to our cars, and getting a percentage of us out of the cars and into things like buses, alternative transportation, is a challenge. And the challenge in that, in my mind, mainly goes around the area of what they call the first mile, final mile problem. Right. And I wonder if you respond to what RTD is doing to possibly get around that problem or address it. Thank you.
You bet. We did a first and final mile study a couple of years ago. It was a little longer ago than that, because it really was pre-pandemic when our ridership was higher, and looked at how we partner with states, with local governments, and with the scooters and the e-bikes and all of those providers. We also have a program called FlexRide that is, it's an on-demand service. And actually, one of the things that we've put into place recently is a partnership program with local governments. We set up 5 sub-regional service councils that are local government people that are meeting with our staff. And they are bringing us proposals for local projects that we help fund. So one of the first ones you'll see is a shuttle that runs throughout Gun Barrel. These are on demand. Somebody calls, they get it. So we're moving some. We just put in place a flyer, the Lions flyer with Boulder County. And that one is actually a regular scheduled, I think it's a van. I'm pretty sure it's a large van. It's not a full-on bus. So I'm not sure if I answered your question there, but did I answer your question?
People, if they if they have to get to the bus and take a mile to do that, and then when they get to their destination, close to it where the bus is, they have to take something else to get to where they're going. And that's a
Right.
big barrier to getting out of their cars.
It is.
So the shuttle seems to have some idea, but I just wonder, anything else RTD is doing?
It's easier this direction because there's so many places you can park along the way. Coming from Union Station, it's tough. There's no parking there. There are buses that are designed to, get there and meet with, have schedulers working to have those connections being made. But, one of the things we are doing is trying to work with our local governments to try to fund some of those first and final mile things along the way. It is hard, and that's a hard piece with the train too, because it's only going to be stopping at 30th and Pearl in Boulder. So there's limited parking there. The bus, at least if it's going from downtown, it stops all the way down Broadway, all the way down Table Mesa. There are various places you can get to it, but that is always a challenge with transit.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I just wonder if you could give us some insights on the sort of macroeconomic ROI, maybe even including climate change avoidance costs and, as well as lower costs for people being able to commute from Longmont all the way down to high cost areas such as Denver. To what extent does that factor in, maybe very long term, what would be the return on investment to the macroeconomic climate?
Yeah, I missed the last part. If you could just say that again. To what extent?
What does your calculations look like in terms of the macroeconomic return on investment? I mean, to what extent does it stimulate the local economy of the whole of Colorado?
It's a big factor, and I don't have those numbers at hand today. But it's stimulating the economy, getting people in from the airport and getting people around, getting essential workers where they need to go, moving people. In terms of, I think you mentioned the climate piece as well. If you have 60 people on the bus, that takes a lot of cars off the road. And that's the idea with our free fare months, is trying to get more and more people riding. I do know that the chambers have been very supportive. The Boulder Chamber, the Northwest Chamber down in Denver, very supportive because they do see public transit as a big economic factor, but I'm afraid I don't have those numbers.
Hi. Once again, thanks, Lynn. I always love hearing you. So,
Well, thank you, Tom.
And thank you for mentioning the ghost train. I would invite everybody to listen to the 4-part podcast. It's great.
I agree.
So my question is, if we're at A, and some of these countries in Europe are at, let's just say, Q, or doesn't matter where, and we're talking about going from A to B, you've seen some of the things coming out of Europe with transportation infrastructure. How can we get beyond B to go farther? Sorry for asking the hard question, but.
No, I think it's a good question. It is a hard question. I'd say that the IIJA and the money that has been put up just in the last few years for infrastructure building and for encouraging rail and cleaning up the rail in the Northeast, which was what much of that money went to, is probably the best step we've seen for getting, at least from A to B, getting farther to Q. Electric bikes may help. That the first and last mile, I think of Europe, and I think they're all over the place, and in helping solve that problem. But I think moving forward on the rail could be a good step for B. I'm also a big fan of bus rapid transit, which is, planning the routes. It's basically there is a classic bus rapid transit that defines what type of bus and how often you can stop and things like that. We don't have that here. It's kind of modified bus rapid transit, but basically, if you look at Highway 36 with the managed lane that lets the buses, and you can buy your way into it, or if you have more than 3 people in the car, you can get on it. That's been a hugely successful route. Before the pandemic, it was carrying 13,000 people a day. And it's not back, and it's partially not back because we haven't been able to bring back the full service, the FF2, which is the express, or the FF4, which goes to Boulder Junction and then down to the other end of the mall at Civic Center in Denver. But it's partially just back. Like I said, people aren't going to work. They're not used to, they got out of the habit of taking transit, some of those things. But it's coming back. It's, you know, we're seeing buses that are full. We're working on, I'm with various groups that are working on bus rapid transit. Well, the next one that's, the corridor that's funded is 119 between Boulder and Longmont. And just, that was Boulder County, RTD, CDOT, a lot of the City of Boulder, City of Longmont, a lot of effort over a lot of years. We finally finished the funding. It's about $130 million. There will be lines at the lights that allow buses to go ahead. One of the things people here like most is there will be a bike lane up the middle of Highway 119. There's such a huge right-of-way there, so there will be a bike lane. The bike lane going south on 36 gets used a lot. There's also the early funding for design on Highway 7 to make that, you know, if you drive out of Arapahoe, later becomes what is sort of baseline, but it's not bike friendly, it's not commuter friendly, bus friendly. So that is, they're working on what that will look like down the road. I just joined a group that, and I'm just tangentially there, it's mostly staff working on South Boulder Road and what that would look like if we were able to get the funding. And all of these pieces are multi-year projects, but you know, I think we can't forget the bus as a big piece of what gets us around, and especially if we can get some of the infrastructure working better on the roads there.
Great, thank you. We have time for one more question.
Great.
Well, this has been really interesting. I am a mass transit user. Yesterday I did the FF1 back and forth to Denver, and have commuted with the FF2 and other things. So first of all, what you've done in terms of 36 is so great in terms of how fast it is now. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering about change management, though. Strategies to get more people to actually, regardless of whether it's a train or a bus, to use it. And, like I have a neighborhood eco-pass. What kinds of strategies are you working on to increase the people ridership?
Well, you named one of my favorite, which eco-pass is. If you have a pass in your pocket, it really ups the chances of someone taking the bus. And of course, downtown Boulder, everybody's taxed, the landowners are taxed down there so that everybody who comes in there gets an eco-pass. A number of other businesses, CU is an eco-pass holder for the students, or for the faculty, and the student pass, which is the same thing for all of their students. So I think that promoting that is a big one. Last year, we were able to get a bill through the legislature that offered a 50% tax credit for businesses that would buy eco-passes or, there are other things, commuting, alternative transportation, funding pieces that they could get the 50% tax credit for. And that is starting to be a good program. Our free fares for youth, our free fares for July and August, ridership went up about I think it was about 22% the first year between August of the year before and August of 2022. Of course, part of that is coming back from the pandemic. And then the next year when we did July and August, overall, it partially was that it was already up in the August before, but overall it went up another 10%. And it keeps growing. So those are some of the programs that we're doing, and I'm always urging expanding the eco-pass program because I think that does make mass transit users.
Lynn,
Bobby.
when you told me about 7 years ago that you were going to run for this office, I thought you were crazy.
I know. People still think that.
What a thankless, glamorous job, which you've turned it into something that is hopeful. And while that may not be a train signal I hear in the background, we all want that and support you for all you're doing to try to make things better for us in terms of our economy and our ecology and all. So thank you for your service for these 6 years and for serving as chair of the board last year. And in your honor, we are donating to you to the Polio Plus Fund 100 doses of polio vaccine in your name
Great.
toward eradication of this scourge around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Dean Bowl, longtime member of Boulder Rotary until 2018, sadly died last November. His memorial service will be Saturday, April 20th at 10 a.m. in the El Dorado Room, Canyon Center at Fraser Meadows. If you are interested in attending, please let Marty Evans know so the family can plan for the numbers expected. Join your fellow Boulder Rotarians for a fun night socializing while helping a local charity. Next Wednesday, April 17th, 4:30 p.m. at Acreage by STEM Ciders in Lafayette, 1380 Horizon Avenue. When you buy 2 ciders, you can go home with a custom designed glass, while partial proceeds go to help Community Fruit Rescue, an organization that harvests the surplus fruit growing throughout Boulder that would otherwise go to waste and donates it to the people and animals who need it most. Wednesday, April 17th, 4:30 p.m., Acreage by STEM Ciders in Lafayette. Boulder Rotary's 3rd annual Service Above Self dinner will be here before you know it. Saturday, April 27th, 5:30 p.m. at the Boulder Country Club. We will honor 4 outstanding members of our community and the winners of our Service Above Self Award. Gary Abusi, Sandra Weeks, Sarah Mishak, and Rich Wildow. Each will have $1,000 donated in their name to their preferred charity. To find out more about these outstanding individuals, meet them in person, to make a difference yourself, please purchase your $150 per person tickets now by seeing Leslie Hertz.
This May, 25,000 Rotarians across 10 states will join forces for an epic day of service. We'll serve our communities, raise $1 million for club projects year-round, and build our membership.
As District Governor, I invite all clubs and all members, all Rotarians, to get involved in this epic day of service. You don't want to miss it.
Boulder Rotary Club's project for the Epic Day of Service on Saturday, May 18th, is a cleanup of the new YMCA Camp Tumblesome Lake in Indian Peaks Wilderness near Brainerd Lake. This former Boy Scout camp has been unused for 3 years, and there's loads of work to be done to get it ready for campers this summer. Chores will include activities for all ages, abilities, and agility. Come between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. and stay as long as you like. This picturesque outdoor adventure camp is about a 40-minute drive from Boulder or Longmont. It's a perfect opportunity for you and your family and friends to practice service above self and enjoy a spring outing in the mountains. Let's be epic. Get your family and friends to join tens of thousands of Rotarians on this epic day of service on Saturday, May 18. Go to the website, epicdayofservice.org, to learn more and sign up. If you want to stay closer to home that day, you can sign up for any of the 5 alternative service projects in our community sponsored by other Boulder County Rotary clubs on that same Epic Day of Service website.
Join us next Friday as Boulder Rotary prepares for Earth Day 2024 for an inspiring session with Jonathan Cohn, the City of Boulder's Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer, as he updates us on the city's climate initiatives, goals, and progress. Cohn is a seasoned environmental leader with a rich background in fostering sustainable and resilient communities. With his extensive experience in the not-for-profit sectors and municipal government, he brings a wealth of knowledge and a unique perspective. We'll learn how Boulder is leading the charge in climate action and discover how we can contribute to making our city a beacon of sustainability. Don't miss this opportunity to engage with a fellow environmental activist at the forefront of our community's journey towards a greener future. See you there. All together now.
Have a great weekend.